Thursday afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns and Vikings wrapping up the 2 days of joint practices, a day off tomorrow, and then the second preseason game Saturday. A look at some of the video coming out from joint practices. Justin Jefferson and Martin Emerson had a battle in the one-on-ones there. Justin Jefferson, the $35 million man, catches it here. Martin Emerson gets the pick as those two just kept going at it. It was a really good battle, good for Martin Emerson. Deshaun Watson finds Amari Cooper in the one-on-one portion of the red zone drills. This time, take a look at Jerry Jeudy. Cornerback just got a little lost there, and Cooper, or Jeudy rather, gets the catch. Here, David Njoku gets up slowly from a rep in a one-on-one drill. Only took one more snap in the team period of things as well, so that's a concern. Some bumps and bruises of note as well. Denzel Ward still not practicing in concussion protocol. Amari Cooper went inside, came up a little awkward after the catch. Mo Hurst also inside, grabbing his left leg after he went down on the field. Hopefully nothing serious. First team defense did not allow a TD first set of red zone drills. Highlight Delpit with a pass breakup against Justin Jefferson. Khalif Halase had a pick yesterday, had another one today on Darnold in the 2-minute drills. Vikings defense, better day than the Browns defense, or the Vikings offense, a better day against the Browns defense than yesterday. They won the majority of 11 on 11 reps. Deshaun Watson talked about working his way through some of the challenges with the offensive line, as well as just competing against another team in these joint practices.
It's good to get out there and compete against a different opponent. Very versatile defense and what Flo do in Minnesota, and it was good to go out there and see different looks and just compete. I don't consider any of those are problems. It just comes down to communications, different looks. You know, this is a joint practice. Usually, you know, going through the week, you kind of have preparation, looking at film, things like this, things like that. But in training camp, you know, you kind of just show up and you kind of try to do the base rules. And sometimes the base rules, you know, the defense might have tendencies that might override those base rules, what we talk about as an offense. So, yeah, I'm very confident in my offensive line. Each one of those guys, they work hard, they study hard, they try hard. So all that stuff can be fixed, and that's why we go through training camps and we practice against different teams. But yeah, overall, you know, there's some good things out there. Keep stacking these days, keep learning, keep growing from it. It's not going to always be perfect, but you know, we always strive to, you know, be perfect, and that's why we call it practice and training camp.
Let's welcome in Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, the Barking Browns podcast. Casey, level of concern with the offensive line, and I couch this by saying it's August 15th, and we still haven't seen Jack Conklin or Jedrick Wills in team or individual drills.
My level of concern is somewhere between substantial and severe. That's kind of where I'm at right now. And if you just look at who you have, the interior, I have no doubt they'll get it all figured out. They even have good depth there. You re-sign Nick Harris. You know, you drafted Zach Zenter to back up Joel Bitonio, White Taylor. They'll figure that out. And you go into this season, we talked about all off season. You have 3 starting caliber tackles. That's a great problem to have. Only problem is only one of those guys has been available to you. So you found out real quick how bad your depth is at that position. And that's not a problem that's unique to the Browns. If you look across the league, offensive line depth is pretty atrocious. But yeah, it's kind of hard to look at your backup options and not be concerned at this point because it's getting late awfully early. I know it's only August 15th, but if you haven't seen those other 2 practice yet, you know, it is concerning, although Jedrick Wills was able to get some work in today in front of the media.
Yeah, I was concerned about the line, and people kind of, an offensive line doesn't age gracefully. It happens pretty much all at once. So I hope we're like pushing the panic button with that way too early. We'll see. But it is something to keep an eye on as we move forward. Browns defense created a lot of issues for the Vikings offense yesterday, first day. They really dominated. Today it was much more even. Maurice Hurst talked about the mindset of the defense this year.
As a defense, I mean, that's our goal. You know, what happened last year, but it's all about this year, creating that identity, you know, building off the good stuff that we did last year and cleaning up all the bad stuff that we did.
So what is the next step for this defense?
I mean, it's just making those big plays, eliminating explosives, being more consistent, and, you know, just getting after the quarterback more.
And Casey, I have no doubt, you know, the defense will be a very good defense. It's interesting that they didn't have Denzel Ward for most of it, and they made things pretty tough on Justin Jefferson, who, you know, if he's not the best of wide receiver in the NFL, he's on the real short list of it.
Yeah, he's in the conversation no matter who you bring up as far as talents go. And I think he brings up an interesting point, Mo does, is every season is unique to itself. Now, the Browns are in a unique position because they're bringing all their defensive coaches back, and then you're also bringing the vast majority of your starters, and the ones that you've moved on from, you've upgraded. So in theory, you know, you should be able to hit the ground running a little sooner than a unit starting from scratch. But to understand that it's unique, and you have to put that work doesn't transfer. You got to put that same effort into it that you did last year, this year, if you want to try to get those same results. And I feel between the personnel and the coaching staff and the approach that they're taking and the hunger that they came out with the day one of the joint practices, you know, this defense understands what's in front of them.
Yeah, and in fairness, we were talking beforehand, it always seems like joint practices, if you dominate a facet of it day one, that team, they're professionals, they're NFL players. They get a little pissed off and they come back, and I'm sure that's one of the things that happened. All right, one of the rookies who I thought has looked really good for the Browns, cornerback Myles Harden. He looked good in joint practices. Draft analyst Dane Brugler, friend of the show, tweeted this out last night. Browns getting Myles Harden in the 7th round, one of the best day 3 values in 2024 draft. Fluidity and ball skills jump off the tape. Looks like he can play in the, you know, my thing that I wasn't sure about, he looks like he can play in the slot too, which, if that's the case, boy, is he a steal in the 7th round.
Yeah, he was viewed as a guy that was probably going to go early 5th going into the process, and for whatever reason, kicks back to the 7th. And he projected to be an eventual starter in the slot, you know, so the fact that he's hitting the ground running, that definitely trends well. And you also have to consider, like, you have a very deep cornerback room coming into the year. Similar to the offensive tackle scenario. You got 3 really high-level corners. You get to this stage right now, you've only got 1 that's able to get on the field. That provides more opportunities for these other young guys who wouldn't see that many reps. And he's just, you know, taking off flying. And the one thing that I'm encouraged by is I think he could even do more than just play slot. I think he could give you some room, like extra depth in the safety position because of his proclivity to come down in the box and really hit people. You know, he's good in run support, and even in the flats, you saw the tight end catch the ball against him, and he just came click downhill, covered 8 yards real quick, and mowed the guy down. He's a sure tackler. He's a hard-nosed player, and he's going to be someone that fits in this defense pretty quickly.
Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, as well as the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. Now I can step aside, take a quick timeout. We'll hear what somebody from NFL thinks about Deshaun Watson for 2024. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the lettuce, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions of prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report. Dan Graziano, ESPN's NFL Live, talking about Deshaun Watson and the 2024 Browns offense.
A lot of changes are being made to try and help Deshaun Watson. They bring in Ken Dorsey as the new offensive coordinator. They feel like his past work with quarterbacks like Josh Allen, like Cam Newton will help with Deshaun Watson. And they're making a lot of changes philosophically to their offense. really focusing on improving their first down efficiency, trying to keep Deshaun Watson out of third and longs. One stat I came across when I was at their camp, they threw on just 41% of first downs last year in games Watson started. They threw on 60% of their first downs when Joe Flacco started. They really feel like the philosophical shift to try and be more aggressive on first down and stay out of those third and longs will be a big help to Watson's performance as well.
Casey, we've been talking about this all off season. The national folks are kind of catching up because of the training camp. They're trying to play to Watson's strengths, which is okay. Yeah. What took you so long?
Yep, exactly. This is what they should have been doing all along. And everyone points to Dorsey being brought in as an offensive coordinator, which in title he is, but he touched on it there. It's because of his relationships with former quarterbacks, what he was able to get out of them, and the relationships he's able to build them to be confident and play within the system. So that's what Dorsey's here. He's going to be Deshaun's whisperer. He's going to be the guy, his sounding board. He's going to be the guy bouncing all the ideas, bringing the schemes to him so they can figure out what to implement for the week. And just having that relationship with Dorsey and Watson to be in lockstep, and so that they can be truthful with each other too, because that's a huge part of this, especially when guys are just getting to know each other. You got to be able to strip it down and be truthful if you want to get the most out of the situation. So the faster those two can gel, the better off this offense will be.
Along those lines, one of the things, without question, the reason they brought in Jameis Winston was to kind of be a sounding board for Deshaun Watson, without question. Jameis Winston was mic'd up during the Packers preseason game. Let's listen in.
Where my dogs at? No, I'm about to spell the Browns out, and I know we one team, man, okay? I'm going to spell the Browns out. I'm going to go B-R-O-W-N, and you're going to say, let's get it. All right, with my B-R-O-W-N, that's it. Let's get it. Let's get it, boys. Let's go. Family on three, family on me. 1, 2, 3, family. Let's have some fun, energy, and execution. Great job, great job, great job, great job, baby. Yeah. There we go, there we go. Yes, sir. Yeah. Good, boy, great. Way to ball. Good job, baby. We needed one. Good job, baby. Great job, great drive, great drive, great job, baby. Yeah, that felt good. Gotta get in and out, bro. Keep balling, all right? Got to. Yeah. Keep balling, young man. Keep balling.
Okay, so again, that's kind of what you want in a teammate.
Yeah, you can see why he's beloved everywhere he's ever been, by coaches, teammates, the media, the fans. Like it's hard to be around Jameis Winston and not see that infectious energy just kind of lift everyone up. And to have a guy like that as your glue guy, as a backup quarterback who's there, like whether he's playing or not, he's engaged in the game as if he is the starter. And it's obviously that translates to if his number does get called, you don't have to worry about him like he got caught off guard. Like he is living each moment to moment and just bringing everyone up around him. And I just hope we get mic'd up clips from him at least every couple games, because I could watch those all day.
All right, so this is from NFL notifications. As they say, I laugh every time I see this, a breaking rumor. If that isn't a social media manufactured thing. Vikings have inquired about the availability of Cleveland's backup quarterbacks. We know that's going to happen. J.J. McCarthy, their number one pick, taken high in the first round, out for the year with a meniscus injury. So that doesn't surprise me in the least. I don't think there's a fit there. I think I saw they have 3 picks next year because they had to trade so much to move up. So I think every team that needs a reliable quarterback will be in contact with the Browns about, if you want to go crazy, Jameis Winston or Tyler Huntley or Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I think all 4 of those guys can, in addition to Deshaun Watson, can play in the NFL.
Yeah, people can argue whether they think Deshaun Watson's a upper-tier quarterback or underachieving, whatever it is. But if you look at the quarterback room as a whole, it's hard to not argue that they are the deepest quarterback room. You have 4 playable options. That doesn't happen. There are several teams out there that do not have 2 playable options, and even some one that is borderline. I don't see the fit with Minnesota per se, although you got to think that Kwesi and Barry have a very good relationship. And if there were to be a deal worked out, those two could probably figure it out, how to make it work for both sides. But I do anticipate one of those quarterbacks getting plucked from the Browns. And it kind of determines how you play him too. You want to showcase him in these preseason games to get some good tape out there. If there's a guy that you want to get an asset or a player for, and if I had to put money on it, I would guess that would be Huntley.
Yeah, that sounds good. So along those lines, Mary Kay Cabot just tweeted this out relative to the game. Kevin Stefanski, after the joint practices today, Dorian Thompson-Robinson will start the Vikings game on Saturday. Tyler Huntley will finish the game. And again, I wouldn't read too much into it. DTR played really well against the Packers, and without question.
Yeah, he played well, and he's being rewarded. Now he's going to get some looks with the backups against other backups, because most of the starters got their work in during the week during these joint practices. But I think that this is the next step in what you want to see out of DTR. He played tremendously well, calm, poised. He showed me a lot of maturity in that in the game against the Packers. So for him to get the opportunity to come out and be the starter, it's very exciting. We were very excited to watch him play last year, but it was for different reasons, in my opinion. To see where he's going to be able to take his game, it's exciting.
All right, this is from Dog Pound Daily. 4 Browns who need to stand out during preseason week 2. They say Pierre Strong Jr., running back, and they delineate Chubb, Foreman, Hines out. We'll see if Foreman gets some time in this game. We'll see. James Hudson, offensive tackle, did not play well in the game against the Packers. Brady Breeze, safety, did play really well. Was a 6th-round pick at Tennessee. Led the team in tackles during that. So can he eke his way onto the special teams? Yeah, we'll see. And Cedric Tillman, wide receiver, just trying to continue really good training camp. Of all of those, James Hudson's the one, man. He is he's on that bubble now. And, they're starting to rotate other guys in to see if, with the number ones, to see if he's going to be around.
Yeah, I actually had him on a list of an article I did earlier this week about players that had the most to gain during these joint practices, and I felt that he was at the top of the list. It's been a pretty you're hearing negative reviews from what's coming out of camp, and then you see what happened in the preseason game. Now it was limited snaps, but his weaknesses lead me to believe that he's just not an offensive NFL tackle. I just think that if you can't maintain control when someone's running the arc and you can't anchor when someone bull rushes, I probably can't play you at tackle, which leads me to believe if he's going to make this roster be as a guard, but then you look at what they have at guard, I just don't think they're willing to entertain it. And he's in the 4th year of his contract. And if you can't prove that you're a playable backup option by your 4th year, the Browns would be better off giving that roster spot to someone they could either develop or someone that's already proven they could do it, like Jermaine Ifedi. So, yeah, he's firmly on the bubble, and he needs to have standout performances from here on out.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast, as well as the Barking Browns podcast. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. I was watching a few clips of Jameis Winston mic'd up during the first preseason game, and I would run through a wall for that guy. He has so much positive energy, and he truly wants everybody on the team to be successful. In my opinion, this is exactly who and what Watson needed to be the calming presence during choppy waters. I mean, I for one, am truly happy and grateful that he is on the team, just as a fan, so I can imagine how the players feel. With all that being said, though, I don't want to see him at all taking snaps during the regular season, unless it's a blowout. Thanks. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. You never want to see the backup quarterback, but I feel better about Winston. I've heard numerous people that he has played with. They ask him his best teammate of all time, and they don't hesitate. It's Jameis Winston.
Yeah, and we touched on it. He's the perfect sounding board for Watson, and you couldn't find another high level backup who, at the end of the day, could like relate to the starting quarterback on a personal level. You know, coming in all the limelight. Jameis has been known since he was 17 years old, #1 high school recruit. You know, Heisman winner, national champion, #1 draft pick. All the spotlight on him, has had some trials and tribulations, but has come out on the other side better for it. Like, that's the type of guy that you need in Watson's corner. Someone who's just going to uplift him and be able to kind of help him navigate everything. But don't make any mistake. It's Jameis Winston's a high level quarterback still.
Yep.
He's one of the very few backup quarterbacks in the NFL that could get out there and throw for 4,000 yards, throw for 30 touchdowns, you know, be the reason why you win games. Now, of course, you want to see Watson start and finish the season. That's a priority. But if something were to happen, I think you're in very good hands with Jameis Winston.
The way that I would couch that is I think he's one of the best 32 quarterbacks in the NFL, which means there's places that he can start and win games. Louis Riddick, former Browns cornerback as well as a front office type, on what he sees in Deshaun Watson and the Browns offense.
Ken Dorsey, well, make no mistake, I'm sure he would be happy to dial up more throws. He'd be happy to spread the field and let Deshaun Watson go to work and give him space where he can utilize not just his tremendous throwing ability, but it's his ability to create on the edges, and for the wide receivers and him then to just let their athleticism shine through, all within the context of structure, obviously. And then look, you know that they have, when healthy, when both tackles are healthy and the front five are all cohesive and Nick Chubb is healthy, this is a team that can bludgeon you then. So obviously they become much more multifaceted. But look, I think the name of the game, just like it is every preseason, but with this team in particular, is health. It is availability. Because these guys just have not been able to play together, and Deshaun really is the poster child for that right now, not being able to play with the rest of the guys that are on this roster who really are top-flight talented people at all the positions on the offensive side of the ball. So I think here, all of the discussion surrounding the change from Alex Van Pelt to Ken Dorsey and the change in philosophy on first down and throwing more and opening up the offense, keeping out of 3rd and longs, it doesn't really matter now, does it, if these guys aren't available?
And again, that's 100% correct.
Yes. Unfortunately, the injuries that happened last year are still affecting this year. That's how bad the injury bug was in 23, that it's still bled over in 24 with these guys waiting to come back from their injuries. The Browns at this juncture cannot afford injuries while you're waiting on other people to return. But as he touched on there, I think this for Watson, this is just time on task. Like, the longer Watson opportunity he gets to develop and put games together and string things together, you're going to see a dangerous, proficient quarterback. You know, but it just comes down to health of the people in front of him, you get the complement of weapons, and him staying healthy himself to put that kind of sample size together so he can develop over the course of the season. Until that happens, we're going to be wondering exactly what he is. I'd say around games 6 to 9, right before you go into that bye, that's when he needs to be hitting his stride and showing exactly who he's going to be going forward into the playoffs. That's what we need.
All right, so this one's interesting. This is from Yardbarker. Is Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah the Browns' best draft pick under Andrew Berry? He says right now, JOK, the best player Berry has selected, but one defender could challenge him for the title before long. Martin Emerson was taken at 68 overall in 2022, and we showed you earlier his one-on-one skills against Justin Jefferson. Has asserted himself as one of the NFL's most dominant press cover corners. You know, DeJuan Jones looks like a pretty good pick. The one that doesn't look great is Jedrick Wills. I say that, and I can't wait for Jedrick Wills to get healthy. Think about that.
Yeah, we say that, but we're banking on him to save that position. So that just shows you where we're at. But I think it's a fair question to JOK if he is the best draft pick under Barry's regime. Very possible. I do think Emerson's nipping on those heels. DeJuan Jones has to be in the conversation. I think after the end of this year, I think we'll be asking the same thing about Grant Delpit. You know, so he's had a few hits, and most of them are on defense. I think that's what we're noticing through the drafting is the second half of the defense, the linebackers through the cornerbacks. That he dials in there, man. That's his sweet spot. And they have a ton of young ascending talent because of the players that Barry has drafted there.
Casey Kinnamon and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Someone who disagrees a little bit about Andrew Berry in this roster. Sports4CLE, I'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Casey Kinnamon from the Orange and Brown Report, the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Morning, guys. Jim Circle from Rochester. I kind of have forgotten somebody that is a major orchestrator of this mediocrity that we have, and that's Andrew Berry. Okay, I noticed that our number 2 pick, actually, which was our number 1, is going to be arrested. I don't know where it's going, but the core of our team, guys like Myles Garrett, Chubb, Boitano, they were all drafted by Mr. Dorsey, not by Kevin Berry. All he ever tried to do was make this big splash by getting rid of one of the better quarterbacks in the league, and he's going to be this year, and Mr. Mayfield, and bring us Mr. Deshaun Watson, which I still don't believe is going to pan out for us. I hope it does, but I'm a Cleveland Brown fan. But take care, guys. See ya. Bye.
Jim, I got to disagree with you vehemently. Dorsey butchered the number 1 overall pick by taking Baker Mayfield. And I said I wanted him to take somebody he fell in love. He fell in love with the wrong guy. Josh Allen looked really good as the Browns quarterback. So if you don't have the quarterback, you got to go trade for him. Baker Mayfield was given up on by 3 teams. He was 500 with the Buccaneers. So don't go making Baker Mayfield out to be this all-pro guy. He's an average NFL quarterback. He was an average NFL quarterback here, and it wasn't good enough. So Andrew Berry tried to get an elite quarterback. Casey, I just, and if you think this roster's mediocre, you're even crazier than I think.
Yeah, he was also giving credit to Dorsey for Myles Garrett, which wasn't a Dorsey pick.
It was number 1 overall. It was number 1 overall. You better not miss that. Dorsey did, and that's why he's, an assistant in Detroit now.
And he's a talent evaluator. That's what he is. He's not a decision maker. He's not someone who works through contracts, that works through trades. He's a talent evaluator. He can evaluate talent. He's
Freddie
not
Kitchens.
Stay within.
Freddie Kitchens.
Exactly. That's why he's not here. He's not the decision maker. If you put him as a cog in the machine to pick talent, you look at what he's done in Detroit, they get talented players. But he's not the one signing the contracts. He's not the one working out trades. That's what he is. He stays in his role. For me to ignore all the talent that Andrew Berry has acquired through either the draft and through trade and the contractual stuff, this is a landslide victory for Berry for looking at what Dorsey was able to do. And it's just, I don't know what would make Jim happy. I don't know if it exists.
He wants a Super Bowl. I get it, but don't go down the Baker Mayfield hole. I mean, Panthers gave up on him. The Rams gave up. He was with the Rams. The Rams didn't want him. They went and got Matthew Stafford. He found a way to get to the Buccaneers, and that's fine. I got nothing against Baker Mayfield other than the fact he's not elite. I love the fact that Andrew Berry looked at it and said, we need an elite quarterback. Now, it might not work out, and you might say he messed up that trade. That's fine. I would rather him swing for the fences than sit there and take strike 3.
And Barry does that at every position.
Yeah.
Every position's under evaluation to get better, and he will make whatever move he feels is necessary to make that position better. And quarterback is the most important position. So the fact that they could see their ceiling and knew it wasn't high enough to go and shoot for the highest ceiling possible at that position, that's what you want your GM to do.
Right.
You don't want your GM to settle, and that's just not who Barry is. He's never going to settle.
No, and the reason he should be the GM long term is because he's willing to make those decisions. And those are the type of decisions that can get you fired as a GM. But you better be willing to make it if you're going to be a good GM. All right, Mina Kimes on the outlook for the Browns, and listen closely, see what she thinks of the Browns roster.
The Browns are interesting to me, Andrew, because they had such an incredible defense. Obviously, it's 1 or 2, depending on how you rank them in the Ravens. And it is typically hard for great defense to repeat year to year. Yeah. But I do think that if any defense can do it, it is probably this one. We just talked about them on my podcast, Me Time Show featuring Lenny, previewing the AFC North this week. Because one, they're unbelievably deep at every level, frankly, and you saw that depth get experience last year. So a guy like Grant Delpit going out of the lineup, I thought was so amazing for them. And I have such high hopes for this year. Then you have these young safeties stepping up, and suddenly now you're incredibly deep and stacked at safety. And I think they're going to learn from the lessons of the playoff loss, and that defenses could be just as good this season.
Yeah, I hope so as well. I also hope that the injuries that are mounting on the defensive and actually offensive side of the ball as well are just camp things that they can get through and they can get healthy to week 1. As we were saying before you came on, really you're at the point of the season, the preseason and camp now, where it's let's just get to week 1 healthy.
And so far they haven't been able to do, doesn't look like they're going to be able to do that.
No, they're going to have to navigate those injury waters yet again. One thing I think is important to point out, at every stop Jim Schwartz has been at as defensive coordinator, their second season was an improvement on their first season. And that's got to be highly encouraging considering what they were able to get done in the first season under Schwartz. For them to have that second season of continuity and building and be able to develop those things, because we already know their fastball can get a ton of teams out. But they got to get that change up, So that's what year 2 is about. Year 2 is about growing. You got personnel, and this personnel is just coming into their prime. This is a perfect storm, and I don't expect them to hold teams to the yardage they did last year. It was historical. It hadn't been done in a decade. But I expect other measurable things to improve. I expect red zone defense to improve. I even expect the sack totals to improve. They were putting a ton of pressure on teams, and I think you're going to see more conversions from Za'Darius, from Ogbo, obviously Myles Garrett. And I think that there's another level to unlock as far as really getting the defense to convert these turnovers into touchdowns. So I think that you're going to see players like JOK and Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill get their hands on some footballs and start to make house calls. So I think that's the next level of this defense that it unlocked to become the most dangerous defense in the NFL.
Yeah, and the other thing would be, the points, and you kind of touched on it with the red zone. The only thing that really matters is keeping the other team off the scoreboard. And if they can do that, if they can keep it to around 20, this offense will score enough that they're going to have a really successful season, without question. You wrote an article, stock up, stock down from the first preseason. As we get ready for the second preseason game, we'll take a look at some of that. Stock up, Isaiah Thomas, he really flashed. Cade York, Michael Woods, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Stock down, we talked about James Hudson, Ronnie Hickman, Siaki Ika. So we can go into that. Thomas, again, you almost forget about him because he was, he was drafted and then he was kind of banged up and then he was on the practice squad. But again, he's flashing.
My first takeaway after leaving that game was goodbye any chance of getting that kid back on practice squad. That is a rosterable player who needs to be in a rotation somewhere. Now, the problem is he's in the deepest edge room in the NFL, so him getting playing time here is probably pretty bleak without an injury. But if he keeps putting that kind of stuff on tape, playing just like a man-child, throwing people around, spin moves, he's holding the point of attack at the edge, knifing down, getting tackles for loss. That kid belongs on an NFL roster. So any hopes the Browns had of sneaking him onto the practice squad for yet another year, I think those went bye-bye.
Yeah, I'm with you. Cade York, got to get the 9-iron out. Yeah. Stop kicking the ball into the end zone, dude.
Yeah, his strong legs, it was a kind of a setback on those. He needs to take just a little bit off, try to kick it right at the edge of that landing zone, make the return team make a decision. But I just got to feel good for him. It's been such a wild ride.
Yeah.
You know, to be a drafted kicker. Obviously, you have that heroic moment in your first ever game, the game winner. And then it's, it was a lot of ups and downs as a rookie. And then if you just think where he was at 1 year ago, how public his struggles were. You'd hear in practice he was just slaughtering the ball between the uprights. Then you'd get in a preseason game and he couldn't buy and make. So to see him come out there and just kill a 55-yarder would have been good from close to 70 probably. You got to feel good for that guy. And then obviously he makes his extra point. So just to continue along that trajectory, the Browns love their guys. They'll continue to bring them back. They see an opportunity to get them back in. And, make no mistake, this is D-Hop's job. But Cade York's auditioning for other teams.
Yep.
The Browns already showed they have no problem at all, and they would definitely keep him on the roster, as a practice squad if they could. But if you can get an asset for him, go ahead and do that.
Michael Woods is a guy that's playing his way into the conversation for the team.
Yeah. Continues to look the part.
Yep.
Week after week, his ability to push vertical and kind of get inside and create leverage and give his quarterback a quarterback-friendly option in the intermediate game, he just does that. It's so effortless for him. That's where he excels, and he's making it a conversation. I think that's the important part here. He's making it a conversation to whether he should be on the 53. Now, I think in order for Michael Woods to make the 53, he also has to be a heavy special teams contributor, but that's what's in front of him right now. Just keep stacking these good games, making plays. You hear it coming out of the practices. He's constantly making plays for the quarterback. It's hard not to put a guy like that on your roster.
All right, we've talked about Hudson, the stock down guys. Hickman was a guy, I had talked about him playing the slot. He played that, he got beat, and he got hurt trying to catch up.
Yeah, and I felt bad putting him on a stock down considering it's only 3 plays. They weren't an encouraging 3 plays.
No, they weren't.
And I believe he's being played out of position. I don't think that's what Sports' dream for him is, to be a dime defender coming down in the slot. But what he did was egregious. You can't give a free release there. You obviously know you have no help over the top to let the guy get past you like that. And then add insult to injury, come up lame with a hamstring injury on the chase down. I just hope he can get healthy enough to kind of showcase what he really is in time. I want him to hopefully gets back out there and can show what he can do as a free safety, because I believe that's where he excels in the NFL.
And then he's got to show something. We've seen not much anything.
Yeah. I was hoping that the body transformation was going to equate to a different type of player on the field. But if you just take a look at his first 3 snaps that he's out there, on the first snap, if you're asked to play either 2-eye or 1 tech on the inside, you have to be able to hold your ground against a double team. He didn't just not only hold his ground, he was on the ground really quick. And if you're a defensive tackle, that's a cardinal sin. You got to be an athlete, stay on your feet, and allow your linebackers to do work. You got to hold that point of attack. Didn't do it. Second play gets washed out the frame. Third play, he's on the ground again. They take him out. The next time they bring him in, he goes off sides. I feel bad because I'm not trying to pile on him, but the eye in the sky doesn't lie. You are what the tape says you are. And what the tape showed me he was on that day was an unplayable player. So he has to really turn it around going forward. Or I don't see how you could possibly move on from Maurice Hurst, for a guy that you can't even put on the field. So Siaki Ika really has to get it together going into the second preseason game.
Casey Kinnamon, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Casey.
Anytime, Dave. Thanks for having me.
Casey Kinnamon, make sure you check him out so you can read him in the Orange and Brown Report. He is also co-host of the All Eyes on Cleveland podcast and the Barking Browns podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Jake Burns from Browns Film Breakdown straight ahead. Stay with us.
Come back to Go Forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
hearing all the reports from the media talking about, our offensive inconsistencies with false starts, pre-snap penalties, and everything coming out of training camp, do you think it's because of the lack of preparation with the backup tackles, guard, center, and Dickerson's not really preparing them, our second stringers, or third stringers, fourth stringers? Is it because of Andy that they're not doing well and they're not really focused? Like, at the end of the day, we did want him to come here, and we've never heard anything negative about him. I just wanted to see, is it his fault that they're not prepared, or is it the players' fault? Because it's kind of starting to pile up, in my honest opinion.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Let's welcome in Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Jake, I know you watch a boatload of film. Is it still too early to say, oh, it's this guy's fault, or it's offensive line play is about 5 guys on the same page. It's a new scheme. It's a new coach. So it may take a little bit of time. Is it that, do you think?
Yeah, I would say some of that's at play. You got to remember that they had pretty structured group for the Stefanski first 3 years of the tenure. Obviously, the offensive coaching staff stayed in place largely, and then they kept a lot of the same guys at the end of the roster and on the practice squad in those positions. Think back to the story of Michael Dunn and Blake Hance and some of those guys. That was 4 years ago now. Now, obviously, Blake Hance moved on, and a few select ones have, but the core group has been intact. Now, this year, you kind of think about the reshuffling of offensive staff, the change of perception of how we're going to do things, moving away from Bill Callahan, and then you think about just a plethora of different players coming into the fold at both tackle. You got to think of like Georgia Fetty, and then you got to think Hakeem Adeniji in place there. Obviously, at the guard spot with Zach Zenter, and then Javian Cohen, the UDFA, that's seeing some early run. There are a lot of new people involved on the offensive side, especially the offensive line. So I think it's imperative to remember that there's a big change of direction on offense. And with that, as a byproduct, is training camp and some growing pains that come with that, right? The 2 guards are in place. We know that Ethan Posich is fine as well. And when those guys are out there, I have noticed pretty much zero issue when I've been involved in watching camp. But I think the tackle play between James Hudson, DeJuan Jones, and DeJuan is performing fine. But you got to remember, Jedrick Wills and Jack Conklin are not an active part of things right now. So it's a very fluid situation. I think Andy Dickerson and kind of melting his theories, and Roy Isfan, who's his assistant offensive line coach, working all that together. It's easy to be impatient on these things because I think we have had the Browns offensive line viewed as one of the best since Kevin arrived, and they've invested pretty heavily in it. But I think patience is required here as they're going to work through, obviously, important steps in the 2 preseason games remaining. And then you're going to see the best 5 to 7 guys as the season begins. We all know how challenging last year was, and they pushed to 10 guys. But I think ultimately it will work itself out. They'll be fine. I think some of those mental lapses that happen either in joint practices or on the preseason stage, and I think you get this a lot, I'm sure you hear too, Dave, but there's some of those guys just aren't going to matter to your Sunday consumption of regular season football. And that's just the reality of it. So I wouldn't worry too much outside of the 8 guys at the top of the depth chart. And then if those 8 guys are a problem, which I have not observed so far, I just think that we can get caught worrying about the minor league structure of stuff. And it's that's not going to change the outcome much of what you're watching on Sunday. So I would say valid concern at times, but kind of keeping an eye on the peripherals and what's going on around those guys is a pretty important thing to remember too.
So who are some guys, maybe a name or 2 on offense, a name or 2 on defense, that you think could be poised for pretty big seasons this year for the Browns?
Well, defensively, it's kind of crazy because you're talking about a guy who just signed a contract extension, but I think that with JOK, with Jeremiah, and this is not rocket science I'm performing here, but there's a level to him getting even better. And it seems as though the Browns, if you pay attention closely to this, would be really sicko mode stuff if you were paying this close of attention. But this is stuff I love. You listen to Jim Schwartz talk about him and Jason Tarver, the linebackers coach. It's abundantly obvious that they think there's another level for the young man, and we think he's among the best 7-ish linebackers now being paid accordingly at the position in the NFL. But then you would agree with me that there's a tier of the Fred Warners and the Roquan Smiths. And if he can figure out a way to get to that level of playmaking, responsibility, all of that stuff. It's just sort of sitting there for him. It's still the age of 24. Doesn't even turn 25 until I think early November. It's a special situation, and he's a special player. So they really did a great job of putting him in more of a weapon role last year, letting him kind of walk up on the edge of the line of scrimmage, letting him play traditional Mike or Will linebacker in the tackle box, the traditional way you would view it. But then they let him creep into the line of scrimmage and create havoc. He is just such a unique part of the roster, and he really makes the defense, I would kind of phrase it like level up. They're just a more dangerous group with him on the field. And then you kind of push into the fact that he is uniquely talented, faster than most people on the field, and can do things with anticipation. Him getting to the next tier is certainly feasible for me. On another scale, I think you're kind of looking at who can make an impact maybe on the defensive line you didn't expect. I think the name that I kind of go back to and what they need, this is more of a need and less a prediction, but I think he came on so strongly at the end of last year. Alex Wright, kind of working that fourth defensive end role because he's going to be behind Zadarius, and then Obanio Okoronkwo is going to kind of work his way in there too, really believe Myles Garrett when he needs a break, all of that stuff. But if they can get Alex Wright, as we talk about the Browns have pushed now 13 guys on the roster to 10+ million second contract players. It's a little crazy to think of Alex Wright as a second contract, 10+ million. We're not there yet. But the theory here is like you draft this type of player in the middle rounds, really good projectable body type, starting to put together by virtue of exposure to the talent around him at that edge position, a really great pass rushing repertoire. You can see how he can develop into something special. And really, they don't even need him to be special. I would say that they need him to just be a really solid player that can start opposite Myles, anchor the run game, and provide some secondary pass rush, because no one's going to get home to the quarterback as quick as Myles. But when you get a lot of one-on-one matchups, being able to take advantage of those and produce sacks is something that is imperative for the edge opposite of Myles and what we think is a pretty good group up front. I would have said Mike Hall. We got to see what shakes out with that situation, because as far as on-field traits go, he's special. Like, he can move in a way other defensive tackles cannot. But again, there's a lot to sort out and work through, and what the future looks like there, which is a little wild to think of. They just drafted a guy in the second round. But I think if you're looking for outside of that realm, Alex Wright is a guy that I think could get an increased snap share. And again, started at the end of the year last year, where he produced multiple sacks, some really positive traits that were starting to show up. Like, guys in the second, third year, they just start to get it. How do I win consistently? What parts of my game are better than others? And you start to formulate a plan that is pretty applicable, right? Offensively, it's a little harder because some of these guys are very honed in on position. I would expect Jerome Ford to be better. The pace at which we get Nick Chubb back into the fold is tough to tell. It's a guessing game for anybody to go about it. And you obviously want to hint to the side of optimism about he'll be back earlier. But Jerome kind of going into a season knowing he's going to be a lead back, he's going to get a lot of opportunity. He's been very honed in on specific parts of the position that he needs to get better about. Pass protection is something he and Deuce Staley and Kevin Stefanski specifically mentioned. If the pass protection stuff can get better, he's a 3-down back. He can catch the football out of the backfield. We saw him make plays in the route concept stuff. I do think there's a level to his ability to create yards that are maybe not provided through scheme. What they call that yards over expectation, which is something that we get spoiled watching Nick Chubb do consistently, was create something out of nothing. You can really get spoiled about what that ultimately looks like. But I think Jerome, having a year under his belt, a lot of exposure to what Kevin likes, and then sort of just like a little bit of a body change you can tell he's gone through. He's getting himself ready to be more durable. I'm excited to see what he can do in his second year. And in the pass catching world, I think most of the positions are pretty honed in. The hope, and this is not necessarily, again, kind of the way I'm talking about Alex Wright, it's less a prediction and more like they need this young man to figure it out. And that's Cedric Tillman. I mean, a lot of buzz, and what I saw at training camp too was really promising stuff. I think he's a talented player, but the nuanced stuff of the position that makes wide receivers good to like kind of average to good is where he has to sort of start figuring more things out. There are times with him that he doesn't understand the little things about blocking, the correct angle, the correct side to put your head on to cut off a guy, maybe on a what's called a toss crack scheme, where he's supposed to crack down on the defensive end or outside linebacker to seal that edge for a couple seconds so the running back can get around. He takes a poor angle, doesn't quite get there. If it's an option route, should he break in? Should he break out? Should he push vertical? Kind of all of those things we saw last year against the Jaguars, a miscommunication between him and Joe Flacco where he didn't read the coverage. Kevin was pretty upset with him. I think some of those things have popped up. And then if you're watching the preseason game, the mesh route where he runs into the DB and makes it kind of abundantly obvious that it was you call mesh because you get an organic pick play in man coverage. You can't make it obvious, though, that you're trying to shield off somebody else's guy chasing him. And he did that. So, like, the little things about the position, he has to get better at the thinking it through things, because the physical part of the position, running, hitting the route depth, being where he's supposed to be, hauling in the football in chaos situations or in the open field, he can do all those things. It's on his tape. But his offense in Tennessee, back when he was playing there, was pretty limited in terms of what they were asking wide receivers to do. So the nuances of the position have been something that have been a little more of a challenge for him to figure out on the fly. But if he can get those, Dave, I think there's a chance he could have a really, strong maybe back half of this year and then third and fourth years of his rookie deal. So it noticed to me that they're trying to work him in more because they understand future contract situations between Amari, Elijah. They would really like to solve that internally to an extent with at least a player who they can trust to play. And then Jerry Jeudy can kind of work his way into maybe a bigger role in the following season. But, Tillman's had a nice select few moments at camp. There's reasons for optimism there. But if he can figure out those little things, I think that's the stuff that can separate him from being average to more of a quality contributor at the NFL level.
Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we'll look at this year's offense, how it's different, as well as hear from Deshaun Watson. Sports for CLE. Be right back. Stay with us.
Cash, moolah, greenbacks, toast, Skrilla, chips, bread and mold, cheddar, butter, lewd and scratch. Find the letters, make a match. Lettuce, gravy, game on the back for $30. That's a wrap. There's many words for cash, no doubt, but there's only one $30 cash word. Check it out. Cash word from Ohio, lottery. It's $30 show. Cash word, it's fun to go with millions of prizes, don't you know?
We continue talking Browns with Jake Burns from BrownsFilmBreakdown.com. Deshaun Watson talked with the media today. He was asked about this year's offense and working with new offensive coordinator Ken Dorsey.
It's a different scheme that is very similar to what I did before in Houston, coming from the same kind of similar background, and just being able to have Ken, who, played the position, being with some high-class quarterbacks in Cam and Josh Allen, and just being around a lot of football, very smart. And he's a very player-led coach, just like Stefanski. And he let his players kind of, do what they need to do for their talent to be shown.
Jake, you do a lot of film breakdown, and we'll get into some of that coming up here in a minute. When you looked at Deshaun Watson in Houston, when he was thrown for all that yardage and kind of viewed as top 3, top 4 quarterback, what did you see him doing well with the Texans? And do you see, the fingerprints of those being brought into this year's offense?
Yeah, it's a great question. Something I think we've all been trying to solve for a couple of years now, right?
Yeah.
Is like he's a unique quarterback in the sense that he can process space, how things work post snap relatively well. He's a unique athlete. One of the better, and I think this is something I need to make clear, and I don't think people understand this. He is really talented at pushing out of trouble, out of chaos. Like when somebody misses a block, when things break down, and this was still on display last year, was really good at getting away from the first free rusher or the first guy to get after him. That stuff is still there. I think there's a level with him of the style at which he wants to play. The way I would phrase this is Kevin is very rigid. If you follow the Kubiak tree of coaches, which track all the way back, obviously, to Shanahan, Kubiak, his offensive coordinator, and then takes it and does his own thing. It is a very regimented system that doesn't allow for, and there's good and bad in each. We don't have to go into that, but it just doesn't allow for much post-snap change of concept. And what I mean by that is if the defense does one thing, how do we react, right? the idea of what that offense is at a baseline level is it's supposed to eliminate, it's supposed to dress up things that look confusing for defenses, but it's supposed to be very simple for the offense. That's why a lot of Shanahan and Kubiak systems have been very friendly for quarterbacks. So the way I would phrase it is like they simplify everything while making it look tricky in a unique way. And that does allow for a lot of scheme stuff to come open, but it also can be hindered when teams get better at it, defending it. So teams, let me put it this way. 10 years ago, fewer offenses were running this system. So defenses were not as exposed to it as often and could get confused on bootlegs, can get confused on run action, things that gave them fits. But as the NFL has evolved and more teams see this every week, including in-house, defenses have gotten really good at defending it. So by defenses getting really good at defending it, you have to find counters now. You have to change who you are. And I think Stefanski got kind of tired of the rigidness of what they were doing with their offense and wanted more insightful answers about how to change things. That's why he brought in different coaches, different thought processes. And I think, again, kind of hearkening back to your original question, Deshaun was really at his best in a specifically designed RPO system that it's not all RPO stuff, but they were very creative in the usage of it in his final year. And that stuff has never come naturally to Kevin. How to implement RPOs, how to implement that part of Deshaun's system, and then how to implement those like evolving pass route concepts based on coverage post snap. Ken Dorsey is known to be pretty comfortable implementing option route concepts that create pathways for receivers and quarterbacks to find openings post snap based on coverage looks, right? Because you call coverage beaters, but if say a team comes out in cover 2, they roll to cover 3, does your scheme provide an answer for that? I think that's what they want to get better at. And they also really wanted to get better, and this is where Ken was good because he worked with Cam and he worked with Josh Allen, implementing meaningful run pass option stuff. Kevin has just never come from that in his background. I think he's tried to apply them. He's just never been quite comfortable doing it. And it's been obvious like how he's structured it, how he's called it, and how to implement it in a meaningful way. That's just something they've lacked. So they bring in Tommy Rees, who's really good at that stuff between his Notre Dame OC run and then last year at Alabama. They bring in Nick Charlton, who's got an abundance of experience in this stuff from his days at Rhode Island and then at UConn as the offensive coordinator. Just guys who view football through a different lens. I still think some of Kevin's staples will be there, but they want to have more ways to defeat defenses than just the stuff that the baseline offense Kevin has run and his guys with Alex Van Pelt and such. They just need more. They needed more ways to think. They needed more ways to process and more ways to adjust on the fly. And I think implementing somebody like Ken and those guys around him that can think back to what Deshaun was best at and actually apply the stuff that he was best at is a way that you can see Deshaun just be better through the natural RPO stuff, through downfield throwing out of empty looks and different variations of routes that come open based on coverage. I think that's just like the baseline. You could get into the weeds with this stuff quickly, but the baseline big overview of what it looks like, I think those are the two implementations that they really wanted to have answers for.
So one of the things you do really well is film breakdown, and we got a couple of clips from the first preseason game, the Packers game, to take a look at. So walk us through this and kind of what you see with this offense.
Right. So what I wanted to point out, and I wrote a film room and did like a video on this, is the Browns implementing RPOs that matter, that have actual significance. So what you're going to see is run action up front, the backside guard pulling and selling run, and then hitting what's called a glance route right behind it. So when we run it back, you'll get a pretty good look at this. And this play was called back because the right guard or left guard, I think, was too far downfield. They'll get better at it as they do it. But what they want to do is read that backside safety. So you see the safety with the X on him right now. If he shoots to the middle of the field, you're giving that off for a run. But if he sits still and leaves that glance window open, we're going to throw that for a touchdown. So if the safety creeping down right here with the first X on him, okay, we can throw that backside glance route, right? If this safety to the field right there with the X on him right now doesn't jump over into the window, pull that thing and throw it to the inside leverage that I believe that's a Marion Brown was going to collect, right? So the concept's pretty simple, but it is a more meaningful RPO than they've ever put on the field. They did a great job here of selling run up front. Watch the way the linebackers react to the pulling guard. Watch the way the safety kind of sits still, reading run, and then that window opens up beautifully. You just have to get Zach Zenter, a guy at Michigan who didn't really do much of that, to not get too far downfield, right? You got to keep 1 yard, you have a 1 yard halo there. It's just you got to get reps at it and experience at it. If you look at from the end zone view, you can also see another really good view of that where Dorian's eyes are in the right place. And the layered up part of it, which I go into in the video, if you join our site, you can see some of this stuff. But the Browns do some little subtle things in there, including moving Marion Brown in motion to kind of sell that he's going to maybe crack block on that safety walk down. There were a bunch of little subtleties that made that play exceptional. And that's like a big time Sunday NFL play right there. You just got to get your left guard, to the rookie, to not get downfield. But that's exciting stuff. And like I had kind of hinted at it, this is how the offense is evolving for you. And there was one play that gave that away. In the preseason, you're keeping everything very close to the vest. You don't want to do too much, but like, hey man, you guys kind of gave one away right there. This is where you're going to be looking to move to. And it was exciting to watch, because if you watch that play, that's really executed very well. And Dorian rips a great throw into that window. And those are like how you gain chunk plays in the NFL these days.
Yeah, here's an end zone look at a play as well. This is the second clip that you're talking about.
Yeah, same one. So you'll see the safety right there. Dorian kind of moves him in motion. He moves his wide out of Marion Brown in motion, and you see him point at him. That's just a little subtle thing to make the defense think, okay, run. But look at the linebackers. Look at 44. Look at the 54 moving. Dorian's eyes are on the safety. Does he jump over? Oh, he doesn't jump over. So that's my simple read. Like, you got to watch the quarterback's helmet will always tell you what he's looking at. But this is a very cool layer of disguise. Like, hey, come in here, tighten down, point at him. That's who you're blocking. No, he's actually out on a glance route. That confuses everybody. Look at where his eyes are. Does the safety jump over? Does he sit? He sits, boom, ball out, right in a tight window. Like, that's fun football. That is the stuff you see the best offenses in the NFL executing really well. So exciting to see that stuff. And obviously exciting to see, Dorian pulling that stuff off, who they are very high on. They like him a lot. But this is the stuff Deshaun is very comfortable executing as well, and you feel pretty good about it. And there's a good example, too. If we watched it, you saw the left guard is kind of drifting downfield. They'll clean that up. But that's the part of, like, just, again, bunch of reps, bunch of practice. Know that you can't work downfield. Those guys almost have to work as basketball players setting picks. You can't work downfield. You can't move your body too much, but you're just rotating and turning, and then making it difficult. Kind of, if they do give it off to the running back there, he can just kind of use your body shield as a way to find a run lane. So just, again, exciting and encouraging stuff about what they could be. And I do expect them to implement less what I would call just basic RPO stuff and more like next level. Those are multi-field, like multi-level reads happening on that play, and pairing it with a run look, the way you have that wide receiver kind of creeping in, you're pointing at him. That's tough for defenses. And I would say, the way I would phrase it is the defenses played the Browns offense last year on their toes. They were not afraid of what they were doing. They did not feel like they were, sort of like, I guess the word is waffling between, is it a run? Is it a pass? What is this play action? Like, they got very comfortable with how the Browns run offense and doing more things like we just saw, where you're really putting them in a blender in terms of playing the run or jumping into their pass coverage looks. That's where you can create windows to make explosive plays happen. In the modern NFL, explosive plays drive the engine. You got to create those 20-plus plays, and you got to make throws like you just saw.
So, Jake, again, how can people see what you do, film breakdown? The really good stuff, as always. Tell us, it's brownsfilmbreakdown.com. When do you do stuff, and what can people see here?
Yeah, so exciting new website. Got the opportunity to launch. We're really excited about it. So we're doing film. We're doing a podcast that's been every day for multiple years. I think 3 years now. Goodness, I've been doing a pod every day. So if you're a diehard Browns fan, you can find that at brownsfilmbreakdown.com or on your usual Spotify, Apple feeds, whatever. But we do a lot of layered up stuff, really deep dive information, film, and write-ups at brownsfilmbreakdown.com. Is a place to come in, join the community. We have chat forums that are going all the time, discussions about this team. And we just kind of phrase it, Dave, as the best community for passionate Browns fans. If you care about beyond the base level stuff you see on Sundays, and you really want to learn about this team, the decisions they're making in the front office, all the way down to the scheme stuff and performance on the field, that's what we're trying to do. There's audio, video, and an article up every day, and we're driving as much conversation about these guys to help you learn your team as anybody. So we're excited about that.
Jake Burns, as always, great stuff. Again, it's brownsfilmbreakdown.com. Thanks so much, Jake. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
Jake Burns, make sure you check him out. brownsfilmbreakdown.com. Really, really good, insightful stuff. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports for CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports for CLE.